up everybody? How's it going? Hope you guys are doing fantastic as always. Thanks for joining us for another video on the Simply Car Things YouTube channel. Here I am today with a special guest on the channel. Some of you guys might recognize this guy because he's a legend in the BMW community.
I don't know about that, man, but I appreciate that.
This is Shaw. He's the owner of SSR Performance out here in Orange County, California. And as a result of that, me and Shaw decided that we team up and make a quick little video on it, just answering some of your questions. And I did throw up an Instagram questionnaire on there. So a lot of you guys inputted some really good questions and I wrote them all down. So got the phone ready and we're gonna go ahead and start by explaining a quick overview and then getting into your questions and answering everything you need to know about the BMW S55 crank hub issue. So, do you want to give them a quick overview of the crank hub issue itself and go from there?
Yeah, for sure. So
Awesome.
yeah, based on the question that I saw that you guys sent over to me, it seems like a lot of people are confused about exactly what the crank hub is. So here we have a OEM stock crank hub that comes out of the S55 engine.
Correct.
And as you can see, all it is really two sprockets, right? And these sprockets connect directly from, or they're supposed to be solid with the crankshaft. So as the crankshaft spins, this pretty much controls the rest of the motor, including the oil pump as well, right? So one of these is the oil pump sprocket, and the other one is going to be your actual camshaft sprocket.
Gotcha.
So as the crankshaft spins, right, just like in any four-stroke motor, you're going to have the camshaft spinning with it. So the crankshaft controls the camshaft, right? So what happens is this actually is three pieces, right? So from factory, this is one piece, and then the oil pump sprocket is another piece. These actually end up independently spinning, and you never want that.
Right.
So
they should be spinning in synchronization with each other.
Correct, especially in an interference motor, because remember, those camshafts, they control the valves. Right? So you have intake valves and exhaust valves. So what happens is in an interference motor, which means that, you know, obviously if the valves are fully open and the piston goes all the way up, they're going to collide, right? You don't want that, right? That's obviously a bad thing. Piston's gonna blow, valves are gonna bend, all kinds of bad things. You don't want that happening. It's what you call a blown engine, essentially. With increasing power, which I'm sure we're gonna go over as well, right? Of what the causes of this spinning are.
Definitely.
With increasing power, it becomes more and more possible for this to happen, for this phenomenon, for these to independently move. However, we've also found that it's not always 100% based on horsepower. Also about driving habits. Also based on
transmission shifting habits.
Correct. Yes. We'll go more in depth on that as well. But also because maybe from factory it just wasn't torqued exactly to spec. The bolt that actually holds us in. So let me actually show you exactly how it.
And that's a stretch bolt.
Yes. This is a one-time use bolt from BMW directly. You have a very special torquing procedure for this. You torque it in. It's a lot of force. A ton of force. Yes, a lot of force. So this right here is supposed to, by friction, hold the sprockets all together.
Gotcha.
So static friction is really the only force holding these.
Don't they use like a flimsy little like washer to hold the...
they call it a friction disc that actually goes in between each one of these, and that's exactly what's supposed to hold it together. And I
don't know how they got away with designing it like that.
Yeah, man, that's the number one question I get when people ask me like, oh, why didn't BMW design it like that? And I'm like, you know what? I don't really have the answer to that. You'd have to probably talk to a very high level BMW engineer to find that information.
Exactly. So how does the new crank hub design, how does it essentially eliminate what the original design flaw was?
Yeah, so what we pretty much ended up finding with the crank hub was that if we were able to lock it in place, obviously we would be able to avoid the sprockets moving independently from the crankshaft itself. So that's exactly what we did. We created a design, or we actually worked with a machining facility which actually used to be creating these crank hubs for Max PSI previously. As you and plenty of other people know, we are pretty open about that on our social media as well as our website. We actually ended up doing a couple improvements on that design. So what we have here is a 4-pin crank hub. Used to be 2. We actually upgraded to the 4. We actually also created better tolerances. So the way that this actually helps is that, as you guys will see in the close-up of this product, it actually locks directly into place. Not only that, but you also see that this separation here between the oil pump sprocket and the actual hub itself is removed. So instead of being 3 pieces, how it used to be, 1, 2, 3, it is instead just 2 pieces. So let me actually move the bolt out of here. So it's just 2 pieces. So this locks into here, and then these 4 pins are probably the most vital part of this design. And what these 4 pins do is allow us to drill 4 little tiny holes into the crankshaft itself. And then pretty much insert this bolt and tighten it down to BMW specifications. And then essentially these 4 pins will never allow this piece to spin independently from the crankshaft itself.
Gotcha.
And that's how we fix it. And it literally has a 100% success rate. We have never had any of our installs go bad. These cars are running over 700 horsepower, some of them.
All day long.
Single turbo cars, upgraded hybrid turbo cars, stock turbo cars, you name it. E85, 91, 100 octane. We've tested them all.
So I think Shah did a pretty good job of explaining the issue itself as well as the new and upgraded solution. This is exactly what's going to be going into my car, and I'm really, really excited because we'll finally be able to start pushing some high power on my M4. And on top of that, it's just going to give you that peace of mind. So let's get into some of the questions that a few of my viewers asked, and on Instagram, you guys asked some really, really awesome questions. So we'll go into the first question. So this comes from Mirzab09. Is a keyed/upgraded crank hub a guarantee that a modded S55 will not have crank hub issues going forward?
That is 100% yes. As of all of our research we've ever done, all the testing we've done, assuming one thing, correct installation. So that's really, key. Really important. That's key. Yeah. There's an analogy that I use really often, which is you have to think about the crank hub as like the heart of the car, right? And then anyone installing it is essentially the heart surgeon, right? So if you have someone who's doing like a heart transplant, assuming that the surgeon knows what he's doing and the part per se, right? The heart that you're using, that is the donor heart, is good. Then you're gonna have a 100% successful surgery, right?
Correct.
And that's exactly how you should think about the crank hub, right? So you're only as good as your surgeon. So you're only as good as the technician actually installing it. So it's really important, really important that if anyone does purchase this product, that they actually go and check and make sure that the shop that's installing it has the correct experience. And the reason I say this is because people buy these all over the world. I ship these out everywhere internationally. I have a lot of
some to like the UAE.
And UAE, UK, Australia. A bunch to all across the United States. I ship a lot of them to New York, Florida. Guys out there love modifying their cars. So they want to be they want to be extra sure that it won't break. It's really important to really go through the paces with the shop and make sure that their technician is experienced and knows what they're doing. Any experienced technician that knows anything about an engine or motor should be able to install this without an issue. It's really a conceptual idea. It's as long as you know the concept of what this piece is, you should be able to get through that install no problem. And we do actually have supplemental instructions. We call them supplemental instructions because they're not necessarily DIY step-by-step, torque this, loosen that. It's just like a general overview exactly
guidelines on the procedure.
What an experienced technician should be able to look at and figure out the install.
Perfect. At Riley P. Max, will the crank hub last if you don't push the car super hard, just doing pulls here and there?
So the thing about the crank hub is that it's not necessarily a wear and tear item, right?
Correct.
The spinning doesn't necessarily depend. Like for example, let's just say a clutch, right? A clutch is a wear and tear item, right? So the harder you beat on your clutch in like a manual transmission, the more you're gonna wear it out, and eventually it's gonna start slipping, right? This is different. This is never supposed to slip. As I mentioned, static friction is supposed to hold it. So the way static friction works is it has a breaking point, right? So if you ever pass a breaking point, it's spinning. That's the way static friction works. That's the way the force of friction works, right? So regardless of you like quote unquote beating on the car here and there or pushing on the car here and there, it doesn't matter. If you surpass the tolerance of the static friction, it's going to spin. And whether you're stock or not, I've seen. I mean, if you look it up on the forums, I'm sure you've read too. There are plenty of even stock cars with 2,000 miles on them that they've had this happen to them.
Issues.
And again, no one knows if it's due to incorrect installation by BMW the initial time, maybe not torquing the bolt down fully, or if it's due to the potential of the crank hub itself may have been faulty from factory. The friction disc could have been faulty. We'll never really know.
There's so many factors that go into it.
Gotcha.
I think that's something that makes it extra nerve-wracking for a lot of people is the fact that it is such an unpredictable issue that can occur.
Right.
You know, whether you are stock, whether you are tuned. Obviously, there have been cases where there are guys that are tuned that don't have the issue.
Right.
But then again, it seems like it's just a matter of time until they run into something. And
yeah. So, I mean, that's another important factor, though. I think. Sorry to cut you off.
Yeah.
I think that's another important factor to mention real quick is I don't want anyone to think that this is like a surefire failing part in your car and you have to do it no matter what before you upgrade the car, right? So there are people, like you mentioned, that are driving around. They're making good power. Most of them aren't making more than just stage 2 power. Like E85, I would highly recommend staying away from unless you're doing this on these cars because it just makes way too much torque compared to stock calibration.
Correct.
So, you know, it's not necessarily 100% surefire that it's going to spin, but your driving habits have a lot to do with it. Your shifting habits, especially if you are driving in a DCT transmission, which I'm sure one of your questions is going to highlight on, is very important to take into account when you're thinking of this thing possibly spinning.
Perfect. At Yas Marina Blue M4 asks, I have the stock hub on stage 1. Is it safe to use as long as I don't use the kickdown?
So
this goes kind of back into what we were just talking about.
Correct. Yeah. So it's again, there's no real true answer to that. There's no way to know whether it's going to spin or not. Has nothing to do really with your daily driving habits, but more so to do with how you mentioned kickdown. The reason why you mentioned kickdown is because what happens when you kick down?
The transmission just jumps.
Yeah, it downshifts and it just boom, just flies up in RPM, right? And that's where a lot of people have reported failures.
Correct.
And on the downshift.
Part of that is the theory is that there's just such a increase or a spike in torque on the load of the crank web itself.
Correct. Tangential acceleration is so much so that it causes that static friction to reach its breakaway point, and then boom, you have kinetic friction, and it moves.
Gotcha. Okay. Question 5 at Mike Wood asks, is a crank hub failure covered under warranty?
Yes. So a crank hub failure is covered under warranty, assuming that you haven't voided your warranty.
Exactly.
Of course, when we modify cars, there's no reason for BMW. Like I get this question all the time. Like, why don't they cover it? Well, okay, you went and like added a crap ton of power to this car.
If you boot mode custom E85 flash,
and you expect them to cover their product. It makes no sense. So
and that's actually, like, if you don't mind, that's part of the reason why BMW hasn't exactly issued a recall, because if you look at the amount of cars that have had this issue that are stock, it's just not enough. And most of the people that do run into the issue, again, even though it is so unpredictable, it seems like when you add power, you tune and stuff like that, that's when the crank hub does spin, right? And so they're not going to honor the warranty if you've modified your car and tampered with the car's ECU and all those parameters. Yeah,
it's such a small percentage, like you said, that they can't justify having to go out there and do a recall on it. It's like you hear of lemon cars, right? Cars that come with bad engines, whatever. Let's just say like a Ford engine and it comes out bad. You know, if it's like a small enough percentage, they're not going to go pull every single car off the street and replace the engine in every single car. They would literally go broke doing that. So
it's just not in the interest of the company.
Correct.
At Jalen McDaniels asks, should it be done before any mods, and what is the best crank hub design, a 1-piece or 2-piece design?
Okay, so that's I think a 2-part question there, right?
Yes.
So the first part was,
should it be done before any mods?
So I think that's really heavily based on your opinion and how safe you want to be, right? Like for example, some people go get rental cars and they'll get insurance on their car because they want to make sure if they get an accident, it's covered, right? Whereas I personally would never get insurance on a rental car because to me, I'm like, oh, that's a waste of money. But you know, in this case, it's the same thing. One person might think it's valuable, the other person may not. Now, if you want to have 100% certainty that you can downshift, you can drive the hell out of that car, and you can be 100% sure that it will not ever have an issue, then you absolutely should go with the crank hub, right? Now, you're the kind of person that's like, oh, you know what, if I spin it, not a big deal. You know, if I have to spend $15,000, $20,000 on an engine, worst case, not a big deal, right? To some people, that's their life savings. To some people, that's a drop in the bucket, right? So it really depends which boat you're in. So that's why it's really based on your situation, based on your opinion, based on how comfortable you are with the possibility of it spinning, really. I think there was a second part, right, on that?
Yeah, so what is the best hub design, a 1-piece or 2-piece?
Okay, so that's actually an interesting question as well. So when it comes to hub design, so there's 1-piece, there are 2-piece hub designs. There are a few others as well. There's one that actually is supposed to like lock its teeth into the actual crankshaft itself. So here's how I see it, right? I don't know what the quote-unquote best design would be, But what I do know is that this one will not fail.
Yeah.
Okay. However, on this specific design, you will never have ever heard of any failure. The one-piece designs, I'm sure, are great as well. We don't have too much experience with those either. But what I do know is that this one will not fail. That's all I can really say about it. Yeah.
Gotcha. At AN20 Olives asks, what are the chances that it can fail if you're stock or tuned? Does a GTS DCT flash increase the chances of the crank hub spinning?
Okay, so I'm assuming they're obviously referring to stock crank hub.
Yeah.
So the GTS flash, I would like to say would not increase the chances.
Yeah.
Now I don't really know the true answer to that question. I haven't done enough testing on that, and I've never noticed that every car that's coming with a spun crank hub for some reason has maybe the GTS flash or doesn't have the GTS flash. So that's a tough question to answer. I say stock, if you're fully stock, really truly fully stock, very, very minimal.
Yeah.
Very minimal. It would have to be a very special case.
Correct.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Your boy Jackie P asks, do you have a body shop / collision center that you would recommend? And I put this question down because Shaw actually does.
So that's awesome. So we actually recently opened our collision center. It's called SSR Auto Body. We do everything from, Mustangs and Camaros to the BMWs, Audis, all the way up to Lamborghinis and McLarens. So we do everything under the sun when it comes to collision work, top quality work. I've heard way too many horror stories when it comes to body shops. Our quality control is just as it's been with SSR Performance. Our 5-star rating speaks for itself.
And at Justin M2C asks, do you think the VTT crank bolt capture mod is enough on its own?
So I have heard people strongly believing in the crank bolt capture. To be quite honest, I have not done enough research on that solution myself. Now, it's quite a different solution than any of the other ones that we've talked about. So instead of worrying about these sprockets actually spinning on the crank hub itself, what it does is it stops this bolt essentially from backing out. That's the goal, right? So you have a stock crank hub with this, and some people believe that the spin happens due to this bolt backing out. Now I will say that there has been a case or two that I've read on where the crank hub was not upgraded and it failed with the crank bolt capture installed. Now I'm not saying that the crank bolt capture doesn't do its job. It is possible that car was just making so much torque that the friction wasn't enough to hold the gears from spinning.
Correct.
But again, I don't really know the clear answer to that question, and I don't think anyone can answer that because there just hasn't been enough testing done.
Exactly.
And again, it goes back to the same thing I've been saying over and over is I can't answer that question, but what the question that I can answer is will this 4-pin crank hub design fix the issue? Again, the answer to that question is 100% yes.
Exactly. At _Ben_visuals asks, when does the crank hub give out and after how much horsepower?
Okay, so if I had to answer that, again, I think we've gone over it, but I would say when you're getting in the 500 horsepower region, which is like stage 2 level usually on these cars, on 91 octane, 93 octane, you probably want to consider it because remember your torque is going to be probably right above that level, like on that stage 2.
Factory.
Yeah, so I think stage 2 power levels is where you want to be worried about it.
One thing that I just wanted to say from my personal experience, and obviously I have quite a few friends that have these S55 powered cars, and almost every single person that I know that has ran E85 in their S55 has either spun their crank hub at one point or preventatively gotten the fix before the car actually spun its hub. And so I don't know what the specific issue is. I mean, obviously Shaw said that 500 horsepower level, it starts to really get risky. I've also seen personally that it just seems as soon as you add E85, something, whatever it is regarding the torque load or the tuning involved behind it, just causes those hubs to go out at some point. In fact, I was even in my best friend's M3 and he was running full E85 when the car spun, and it's definitely not a situation you want to be in.
Yeah.
So
I think I've told you, there's a lot of different theories on why that might be the case. Correct. I really truly believe it just comes back to the fact that the car just outputs so much more torque.
Right, and I think also this is a good point to also talk about if you if your car has a DCT transmission, some of the precautionary measures you should take if your crank hub has not been done and you are running high power.
Yeah. So DCT, based on what we've seen, has a lot to do with it. I personally believe that it's going to be because of the fact that it downshifts so quickly that all that torque just hits pretty much this crank hub so fast that the tolerance of that static friction is exceeded, right?
Yes.
And
guys, the DCT transmission shifts. I mean, we're talking like under 100 milliseconds, something like that.
It's crazy.
So in that short of a time, we're talking a massive spike in torque, which is going to be a major shock to the system.
Correct. So yeah, it's important to know that, or take note that DCT transmissions definitely, I would say, have a higher risk of spinning the crank hub. However, manual transmissions also do. If you ever, by accident, quote unquote money shift, right?
Yes.
So you shift into the wrong gear, you're trying to go from second to third, and you somehow jam it straight into first. There is a very, very, very likely chance, or from fourth you're trying to go to fifth and you accidentally jam it into third, very likely chance that you're going to spin your crank hub. And again, why? Because that RPM just jumps up so high, you over rev your engine, and boom, you spin your crank hub.
Well guys, there you have it, answering all of your BMW S55 crank hub questions. As I stated in that video, I did put up that Instagram questionnaire, so a lot of you submitted some really awesome questions and information that we could explain to you. I hope you were able to take away some very valuable knowledge from this video. And if you did enjoy it, please make sure to hit that thumbs up button, as it helps to spread this video and bring awareness to this issue and help it get it in the hands of other enthusiasts that may be interested in the same content that you are watching. If you are new to the channel, make sure to subscribe. If you'd like to contact SSR Performance regarding this issue, all of their contact information will be linked down below. With all that being said, plenty of more content to come. I can't wait to share more in the near future with you guys. Take it easy. I'll catch you on the next one.